for anyone who's not seen Ghost Stories yet, can you tell us a little bit about the show?
Yeah, let's start with how many people have seen it. I'm not expecting too many hands. Oh, okay. So, for those who haven't seen it, Ghost Stories is a play. It is an 80-minute experience. It's very funny, but it is properly scary. I think so far our numbers were about 400,000 people have seen the show so far, and it's almost impossible to find out what the show is about. It's not like any other play. Myself and Jeremy Dyson have been best friends since we were 15 and have always had a mutual love of horror. And so we wanted to create the play that we would have wanted to see when we were teenagers. And the truth is, we're both so babyish anyway now that our tastes haven't really changed that much. So the play, it's for anyone of 15 over, 80 minutes, you go into, it is entering a world. It's not like another play. The show grabs you by the throat and it doesn't let go of you until you leave 80 minutes later. I think that's fair?
I think that's absolutely fair, yeah. I was going to ask Gary about his character. Can we do that?
No, we cannot.
No.
So we
So
can
this
give
is
you
Gary
a hint.
who's in it, and he's
Yes.
brilliant in it.
I can't say anything though. So.
Yeah. But that is one of the things, let me tell you where that came from. Everything you see is so spoilt for you now. Every trailer shows you the entire plot. Every review spoils everything for you. And one of the other things that I do, I wrote and directed an awful lot of the Derren Brown TV stuff and all of the live shows. And one of the big things within that we've always done is ask for secrecy from the audience who are there and also from the critics. And that makes life harder for them. But it was the same with this, because it's such an adventure as an audience member to go and see something where you literally, I mean, it's only recently we've started talking about it as a play. Up until that, we just didn't even say what it was. You hear it every night, don't you? There's this frisson in the audience of what the hell are we about to watch, because they don't know what the experience is or where this journey is going to take them. It's very, very different from The Woman in Black, which is a phenomenal play. If you haven't seen that, that's absolutely, it's a must. But the difference is, when Jeremy and I were writing this, we wanted it to be utterly contemporary, because that sort of M.R. James Dickensian ghost story thing is done perfectly there, so why bother trying to redo it? And we wanted something contemporary where you would know who the characters are the minute they walk on stage, which is what we've tried to achieve. But truly, I was in there 2 nights ago to see it. Honest to God, I mean, the screams are absolutely massive from the audience, and proper jumps. I was sitting next to this very well-to-do gentleman who's a theatre goer I didn't know, and he was in his mid-50s. The language coming out of his mouth was just a treat. So, yeah.
So it's safe to say that it's a scary show.
Yeah.
We don't get that many scary horror-style shows in the theatre. You've already mentioned The Woman in Black. We've got Let the Right One In, which is slightly different.
Yeah, it's a very different thing. To me, again, Let the Right One In is absolutely brilliant, but to me, that's horror for Guardian readers. That, to me, is... It's wonderful, but it's not horror. If you're a horror fan, that's not horror. It's a brilliant play that has themes that are dark, and there are certainly a couple of moments that are... there's definitely a moment that will make you jump in Let the Right One In, and it's a beautiful, poetic, wonderful piece of theatre. That's not what we are. I mean, I'm very proud of it. I'm sorry, you're not saying a word. I'm so sorry. I'm very proud of what we are, which is like the sort of bastard child of the West End, really. It's a very different thing. It's got a very different energy, and it isn't clean and nice in the way that those other things are. The sole purpose, really, of our play, aside from what the play is about, that Jeremy and I profoundly believe is important, but the main thrust of what we wanted to do was to entertain, to give value for money, and to give the audience an experience that they will never forget.
And we've said it's very different to everything else in the West End. How was it for you as a performer with that audience?
Let me answer that. No, go on.
It was quite nervous before we started doing it. The show was done previously at the Lyric Hammersmith in Liverpool and at the Duke of York's. And when we were rehearsing, it was a new cast this time, we were saying to each other, this is not going to be scary. I mean, we couldn't work it out, and we were a bit nervous about actually doing it. And then when we got there and people are screaming and swearing at you, telling you to go away, I think I can say, but no, it is very different. I entered a play a bit later on in the play, and there's a very strange smell that comes from the audience, and it's not alcohol. It's not that either, but there is a sense of fear in the room. You cannot escape in the Arts Theatre. It's 350-seater, it's run down, it's been made to look worse than it ever has to fit in with
That's saying something.
It is, yeah. And you can't escape. There's sensory moments in there. The sound is incredible, the soundscape in it. And
I think it's fair to say it's an Olivier-nominated sound design.
It is. Yes, I forgot about that. Sorry. But no, it's without saying too much. Again, you come in there and it's an experience. It's not quite event theatre because it is a play, but it's as close as it gets, I think. Yeah, and you come out there. You'll be laughing when you come out.
There is that. I mean, you do hear when the audience go in, there is this palpable sense of, if you had to pretend what the sound is, it's going in, and then coming out, it's, it's really something. And again, we'd be idiots if we said every single person who goes to see it is scared, every single person who goes to see it jumps. They don't. I mean, it's like a great comedy. You can go see it and think it's the greatest thing in the world, and the next person's, I didn't find it funny at all, But for the most part, I was in it when it was at the Duke of York's. I did it originally, and having done all of those shows and then to see it again and again, it's every single night there are the same big reactions. There's a wonderful thing as well that they've done in this production. They have a thing called a scare cam, which I think if you go on Facebook and look it up, and every night at this one particular jump moment in the show, like in a theme park, this camera goes and takes a photo of the entire audience, and then the producers go, look in and find the best screaming faces. My God, it is really something, because you can't believe it's in a play. And that's also part and parcel. As you sit there now, those who haven't seen it will no doubt be sitting there. Some will sit and think, I hate scary stuff, I don't want to go. If you are thinking that, I urge you, go anyway, because it's great fun. You will enjoy it. And most of the other people think, oh, come on. How scary can it be? It's a play. And that's the game you're playing with the audience. And we just pull at those little threads again and again and again. So every time you think, oh, okay, this bit, I know what this is now, it's always changing on you.
Why do you think it is that we're so interested and intrigued by the supernatural?
By the supernatural, I think that's different to why we want to be scared. I think the supernatural is an easier question to answer. The supernatural is, I think, if there was the faintest shred of evidence ever, if anything could ever clinically be proved, that means you have to take that and say, well, if we know 100% that's real, therefore the spirits are real, therefore God's real, therefore heaven's real, hell's real. My dad that died 5 years ago, that means his soul's there, so when I die, I'll go and see him, that's great, da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da. So that's why the supernatural, if it's real, is such an essential part of what our DNA is, because it answers everything. Makes the very notion of dying becomes palatable because, that's not the end. So that's why I think that is... I'm slightly distracted by your Fright Fest bag. Great bag. So that's why that's essential. Why we like being scared, I think, is a much more fundamental animal need, and that's because we've got a little tiny part of our brain. It's the oldest part. The brain morphs and changes as we morph and change throughout man's history, but there's one little tiny bit that has been there since Neanderthal times that remains, and it's called the amygdala. And that little bit in the brain is the bit that sparks the fight or flight syndrome. That's the bit that keeps you alive and safe if something bad happens, or if you get scared. That triggers adrenaline, it triggers sweaty hands, it triggers what's called the adrenal dump, which is, as it sounds, when you go so you can be much lighter and run away quicker when you get scared. That's what that is. And that little bit doesn't work too often these days, because thank God where we live in comfortable, safe lives. So there's something about horror films, horror experiences, thrill rides that allow that little electric charge that you don't have in your normal life. So I think that's a huge key as to what that fascination with fear is.
Gary, hello.
How do you, mate?
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Which makes it easier, I presume, to be in...
Yeah, I mean, it's not scary to be in it now, because we know if there are any tricks in it, we know how they work. There might be, there might not be. Is that okay? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had some experiences in the past, but I believe less as time goes on. I think you just, but there are people who we've met after the show who will say that happened to me, or that I totally believe it, and have you seen this? And you go, no, I'm just an actor, I can't tell you any answers, I really can't. But yeah, no, I don't.
Believe in God?
I used to, because I went to a Catholic school, but, less now, again.
Spirit? Soul? You don't have to answer if you don't. I'm just interested. We've never had this conversation.
No. Just bear with us, folks. Immense relief, huge joy, and really excited to be in it. I mean, we were all excited to be in it before we started, but it felt like a gig at some points. Having 350 people scream at the top of their voice at something while you're, at you essentially, is like no other experience I've ever had as an actor. And the feeling in the room, the atmosphere that's created is electric, and it's something that I will really miss when this show finishes, because I can't imagine ever having that same type of experience again. But I knew it would be frightening, but because we'd rehearsed without sound, without stuff, when it all came together and watching bits in the tech, it was, ooh, this is going to be good. So yeah.
It should also be said the cast there's a great sense of faith that we've always tried to get from our cast. It was the same when I was in the first production. We're so secretive about the play, myself and Jeremy, that unlike lots of other plays, it isn't published. We haven't sent it to be published. If we want to see an actor, they don't get sent the script. All of the cast, as they were the first time, all auditioned with one little speech, and then they had to accept the job on the strength of that speech. Really, no one got sent a script to say, okay, have a read, see what you think. And there's something about the madness of them doing that just... There's such faith in it that it's part of the exciting journey.
There's a friend of mine who I went to drama school with played the part I'm playing originally.
Oh, yeah.
And I phoned him to say, should I do this? And he said, yes. I said, why? He said, I can't tell you, but you have to do it. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's good enough. That's good enough.
We are making a film of it next year. That was all... The negotiations on that all finished very recently. This is probably the first time I've spoken about this publicly. So we've adapted it. We're very excited about how we've adapted it, because all of the things that make it feel alive and in the moment in the play, we've found, we think at the moment, a narrative way of doing that within the film. We're making it with Warp Films, who I think are the most exciting British independent film company. They're amazing. And Jeremy and I have written it, we're directing it, and I will be playing that role that I played originally as well. So that will, at the moment we're looking at shooting that next May. Fingers crossed for Fright Fest the era.